Welcome back to the Scale Forward podcast. Today, I've got Michael with me, the founder of Plural. Plural is the control plane for platform teams. It helps bring AI into day two operations, automate complex upgrades, and manage Kubernetes fleets across any cloud, data center, or edge fully under your control. Michael, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Mike, that was a bit of a mouthful of a sentence that I said. Are you able to break that down in layman's terms and then tell us how you came up with the idea and how you got started at Plural?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to just sort of get a feel for what we're doing is the general space in which we're operating is platform engineering or DevOps. It's basically the management of a cloud infrastructure, AWS, GCP, Azure, and then Kubernetes infrastructure, which is typically deployed on top of it. It's a niche skill set, kind of like a dirty job within the engineering space. It's usually underutilized within organizations. People don't hire the teams out to full scale, and it becomes a bottleneck for the entirety of the productivity of your entire engineering org because everyone needs some degree of infrastructure. So what we're really trying to do is build the tool chain that would allow those teams to do more with less. Allow for that small team to be as productive as possible and not have to have the really long hiring cycles and really complex workflows and troubleshooting that oftentimes comes with managing this stuff. Specifically has been our focus, and it's historically a huge pain point for people. It's very, very complicated. Everyone has a number of battle scars around it, and we do a lot to basically make that simpler. How I came up with it, basically I was an engineer my entire career. So I was actually working in this largely in the back end of the tech stack. And I basically just sort of, when Kubernetes came around, I was incredibly bullish about its potential and knew it was probably going to become the de facto standard on which almost all applications were going to be built, and knew there was a business opportunity around it. We can go into this in a little bit of detail, but we actually had a slightly different idea around how to monetize and how to productize Kubernetes around basically the repeated deployment of open source software in your own environment for things like data security and privacy. But then we kind of realized that Kubernetes was really the pain point for people and focused the way we're focusing now on making the lives of Kubernetes operators a lot easier.
Okay, that does make a lot of sense, especially and clear pain point that you understood really well. So a bit of a no-brainer there. How did you early on? I mean, I guess when did you launch it? When did you get started with it?
2022 was like basically our go live date.
All right, great. We'll talk about how you came up with a go-to-market strategy just in a little bit. But early on, how did you balance sort of the complexity of automating infrastructure, open source, innovation, control, all that sort of thing? What was your thoughts around managing that?
So there's also like a huge caveat because our product changed massively from what it was early on to now. But there were a number of basic things that we sort of knew on the product side on how to do this. One was we wanted Git to be really basically the central point at which you interact with your infrastructure. That was sort of emerging at the time as a trend called GitOps, and we were playing around in that space. And the idea there is we could generate the Git repository, and then people can modify it post hoc and have a familiar developer workflow around it. That allows you to still be incredibly sophisticated in the amount of configuration you give people, but to have like an onboarding flow that would be really straightforward on Rails. Actually, kind of the analogy I was always sort of working with in the back of my mind was the experience of Ruby on Rails, or there's now a variant of that called Elixir Phoenix that we use, where you would Ruby on Rails originally, you would just generate an entire web server with all the scaffolding into one repo. And for the most part, you don't modify a lot of it. But if you did need to, you can actually dive into the internals and make the modifications. So that sort of developer workflow is kind of like how I was imagining the system to work. But we rebuilt the entire guts of that after like a year or two to be a little bit different and so some meaningful ways. Yeah, that was generally how the complexity was managed, is be really, really focused on Git, give an extremely complete initial experience that is working out of the box and has the capability of being reconfigured afterwards by experts if they need that degree of sophistication.
Okay. So I think it's tough when you're in this world versus a traditional sort of just like an AI SaaS or something, right? You've got to make architectural decisions that are developer friendly, that give them control, but also balance. So what's the high level of thought process on how to do that? How do you prioritize what's next, what to build next?
Really what we sort of are mostly thinking about now in terms of how to decide what to build next and where to invest our time is really basically like trying to maximize differentiation. So one key thing, especially in our space, is we're selling to people who are basically hostile to being sold to. Developers really, really do not like change. They oftentimes are very, very committed to the existing tool chains they use. Oftentimes they've also built their own tool chains. So I guess the way that we think about a product that we have to build is it's got to, the benchmark that we have to hit is it's got to be 10x better than what is the current state of the world, basically. If it's not going to be that way, it's just not going to get adopted, and we're certainly not going to be able to sell it. And the big lever that we found to be able to create that differentiation has been in the last year AI. Obviously, it's sort of like a topic du jour, but the specific space we're in is kind of very difficult to get AI to integrate with. There's a lot of complexity to it. It's a pretty substantial integration challenge. Usually the systems that are interacting with are like, there's about 5 or 6 different sources of truth, and they change extremely rapidly. It's not like a CRM that's like being changed at human scales. It's being changed at computer scale. So you have to have a really thorough engine to be able to index all that data and be able to RAG it and everything like that. But the main thing is basically the reason that we're bullish on AI specifically is we know that there's not a we basically know we can win the build versus buy definition in that space, because the existing builds that are happening within a lot of companies are not successful, at least related to DevOps. So in that case, we have like a stack that we built fresh from the ground up. We can integrate in the code base in any way we choose, and that allows us to create a really differentiated product and get to that 10x benchmark that can be sellable.
Yeah. Okay. Are you coming up with these ideas based on your own pain points, or is yourself or the team reaching out to these devs and collecting sort of feedback as of, yesterday or today, what the actual problems are that they need help with?
Yeah, it's actually also an interesting question. So it's definitely a combination of all of those. We basically get information from basically a few different sources. One, obviously, my own intuition as a developer myself, and I think is needed to be able to improve the workflows of people like myself. It's a lot that's basically just introspection. We do get feedback from our existing customers, and we have a lot of touch points with them. One aspect of our business is it's very implementation heavy. And so we're going to be talking to our users on a weekly basis. We can obviously run things by them, get a lot of feedback from them. The other caveat of that, though, and this is also just nature due to the like low velocity of our space, is there's not a whole lot of those customers. So you're kind of only sampling from a small pool, right? The last side of it is we will get it from basically sales calls. So we'll be doing demos. People will actually either provide unsolicited feedback, or you can try and pull feedback from them within the sales call process and get an idea of like what their pain points are, and sort of synthesize all of that information. And all of those has given new insights in various different ways. But if you have like a business, our business is kind of a long sales cycle business. If you have a business like that, you're going to have to really be able to trust your own taste in this specific market. And if it's not up to snuff, you're gonna be in a rough go. Like if you can create the ideas yourself, you can ultimately get to that level of product market fit and differentiation that can start creating a flywheel. If you can't do that, you're probably going to have a lot of trouble.
Yeah, good. I mean, you made a really good point. Product market fit. Back, if you can rewind back to when you were starting this and you had an MVP, how did you get your first paying customer? Can you remember?
So the very first paying customer on the prior version of the product before we pivoted out of it was basically a connection, like an insider connection sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like a guy who we'd hired in, knew another company that needed some help deploying open source software around data engineering. We got a contract. It was actually a pretty big contract too. So we thought there's some real, there's potentially some real pull here, but it was a red herring sort of thing. There wasn't actually as much repeatability as we realized. With the new product, a lot of that was actually done via venture connections. So our VC, Primary Ventures, does a really good job of helping out their portcos, especially in the go-to-market side. So they have a BDR function in-house that will do outbound emails under their VC domain that has a lot higher engagement ratios, and then it's kind of up to us to sell from there. And we specifically were able to get one pretty really good Fortune 500 logo interested in our technology and trying the product and everything like that. The key that got them involved, though, is there was a very direct, meaningful pain that we both knew was there, specifically around Kubernetes upgrades and a nuance with that. And we just solved it very directly for them. And it was a very quick way to see, exactly what it needs to be. Our product was more expansive than that, but there was a very clear wedge that could get that deal done. And the other thing is, like I said, this is a kind of a business that's you're dealing with people who are hostile to being sold to. So you have to demonstrate a lot of credibility. We're dealing with a business that's obviously selling to people who are typically hostile to being sold to. And the way you generate their trust is providing a lot of clear credibility. So a lot of those early sales calls were really dependent on me and the rest of the team showing that we knew our stuff, showing that we really could figure out a solution to that specific problem, and being compelling enough and willing to be flexible enough to solve it for them. So that was another aspect into getting that deal that was really, really crucial. But the VC assistance was probably the most critical thing for us at that time.
Right, and I think that's I was going to touch on that. I think that's a unique circumstance. Not everybody, or A, is going to have a VC involved, and then B, a VC that also does some outreach for you and some sort of lead gen and puts them in your pipeline for you. So that's an interesting experience, I think, in itself. But when you think about growth, what do you think is going to be your best acquisition channel, say for the remainder of the year or 2026? Are you exploring any other acquisition channels yourself or as a team?
Yeah, so our specific acquisition channels are basically we have a clear event strategy. So we go to a lot of the main tech events. Those are going to be KubeCon is the biggest Kubernetes, the main Kubernetes conference. There's also the cloud conferences, AWS Summits and AWS reInvent, and comparable for GCP and Azure. Those are kind of these high volume, high effort, week-long sprints where you can do hundreds of demos to potential customers, they get the leads and everything like that, and at least make a really good impression. A lot of the people in this space are not necessarily browsing for technology on Google or something like that. They can be actually kind of more old school, and they need that sort of conference presence to get involved, especially if you're talking to higher up in a business, like an SVP or VP level type of thing.
Right.
We do also some degree of paid ads. Reddit has been the most interesting of those, actually. A lot of the engineers actually hang out on a variety of different set of subreddits like our Kubernetes, and you can target those subreddits really effectively and get a lot of impressions that way. There's also, paid search and stuff like that. So kind of passive inbound demand gen. We also do have a BDR who's doing cold calling now. We got into the revenue level at which you can make that sort of investment. And then the VCs are also still doing that, but it's a slightly different motion. Specifically, what we have the VC doing is trying to get people pretty high up in an org, like a VP, SVP type level, like an executive decision maker, basically, and specifically focus on AI initiatives within their engineering org, and ideally land a sort of joint partnership type of arrangement where we're going to sort of bend over backwards and give them a lot of roadmap access and a lot of the ability to tell us what they specifically need, with the promise that we will solve it. And we've developed and demonstrated the competence to be able to potentially solve it for them. That's kind of also going back to that intuition that this is going to be a buy versus a build type of thing at a lot of companies.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to ask a couple of questions in a second, but just really quick, when you go to these events, are you more of a sponsor, or are you someone that has an hour time slot that gets to demo your product?
Oh yeah, we all, if we think the event is high value, we will sponsor, we will get a booth. And that's the only way that you can really get actual ROI out of it in our experience, because you need people to be coming by and doing a high volume of demos to be able to actually get some meat out of it.
Yeah. Okay. And have you thought about, I don't know, running webinars? That's a traditional play, isn't it? So you'll get some leads, you'll funnel them to a webinar, then you'll showcase what pain point you solve on that webinar. Have you done any of those? Have you tried it?
We actually haven't tried that. That honestly would be an interesting idea. The one thing that would be a little bit tricky is it's a really big time investment. So we'd have to be confident that we can get people in the webinar, and then obviously you're going to be prepping the specific case study you're going to, and it would probably be me doing it, and that's a pretty expensive resource. So
right.
But Like this is definitely a product that needs to be demoed. So that sort of thing where you get like a really tactile view of what the product can do is a really good way actually to get some credibility out there.
Yeah, I think you could quote unquote, not that you could pre-sell it, right? Like pre-book it out
Yeah.
before you even develop the idea, sell the thing before you do it. But
Hmm.
that's why I was thinking about the webinar, because this is, as you said, definitely something that somebody needs to see rather than hear
Yeah.
about to get it. So that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Are you publishing any content as well? So say like on a Medium or a Reddit yourself as the founder, or is that something that the team's doing?
Yeah, I forgot about that. We do actually have content marketing. That is basically outsourced. So there's a content market, like a developer content marketing organization we use called Draft Dev that writes a number of different blog articles. They oftentimes get actual engineers to construct the article itself. So it's like a subcontracting sort of thing. And that's mostly just so that there can be a lot of volume for SEO type content. But when there's a really like bullish idea for an article, I will write it. And that's just like a resource allocation question,
Yeah,
really.
just so it looks good. And then also the
Yeah.
goal, I think, moving forward for a lot of businesses will be trying to figure out how to show up on these AI LLMs, especially in
Yeah.
your world. Do you think there's a lot of devs and engineers that are just hanging out in these LLMs and searching for particular keywords that you think you could rank for in there?
I honestly don't think that's probably going to be a meaningful strategy. I mean, it's probably still matters. There's enough people using it that like there's a kind of a funnel math thing that you kind of can't deny. I really think Reddit and Twitter are probably the best places for that. So Twitter, we haven't been leveraging enough because I've been like basically warming up my account to be able to have
Okay.
more impressions. But I actually think there's a degree to which there's a love-hate relationship with AI amongst a lot of engineers, and some of
Right.
them definitely use it, but they don't necessarily trust it, right? So a social channel is a lot better because you have like the real human interaction and a trusted voice. There's another engineering specific outlet called Hacker News that's historically been very trusted by engineers. We don't use that as much as well, and it's because it's become heavily manipulated by the YC organization. But there's still like good content there, and I think there are people who still use it, but it's very hard if you're not within YC to rank apparently on it.
Yeah, classic. Okay, that does actually make a lot of sense. When it
Yeah.
comes to, I think the interesting takeaway for say like somebody listening is you're very strategic about what area you're playing in for lead gen, and if you don't
Mhm.
see the point of going into that channel, then you won't, which is something that a lot of us I think still skip. We want to just spray and pray everywhere rather than take a sniper approach. I think the sniper approach absolutely applies to Plural and yourself.
I think if we had a very easy come, easy go business, especially if it were more consumer focused, just blasting your product everywhere is makes a ton of sense because there's a very fast acquisition loop. You can get a credit card swiped quickly. That's just not at all what we have. Like we're gonna have to go through a fairly large company, get the ability to interact with very sensitive information within their cloud. It's going to have compliance reviews that goes through and everything like that. It's just a much more heavyweight process, and so it's really unrealistic for that to convert to the way that you want it to do. What we really need to do is we need to find that specific person who has the influence within the organization who can basically move us through that whole process. And so that's why you have to be a little bit more selective and you have to end up, being more strategic.
Out of everything that we've kind of just discussed, when you think about scaling, what do you anticipate would be your biggest challenge to get to the next level right now?
So I guess there's a few things. One is just like obviously you have to find the right people. Getting people into the pipeline with enough like regularity and at the right cost is going to be a thing. Like
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
think
have to
that's
figure out
everybody,
how to.
right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
lead
We're
gen.
gonna have to. Yeah, yeah. That's definitely an issue. One other thing, because we're really technical, hiring a sales force that can handle the sale of our product is an interesting challenge in and of itself. Most salespeople don't come in with like DevOps expertise just sitting around in their head. So you have to train them up and like get them to be able to be compelling within that space. You can solve that by hiring from relatively comparable companies who probably had already been trained and stuff like that. But we also like do a pretty rigorous process of demo training people and hopefully getting them to a point in which they can be relatively fluent in it. The other big bottleneck for us is there's oftentimes a lot of implementation. we probably are going to need like a forward deployed engineering or sales engineering staff as things scale, and most of that's being done frankly by myself. That's also a little bit hard. It's hard to find engineers who are customer facing or like capable of being customer facing. But I actually think the sales hiring challenge is potentially a little bit harder.
Yeah, most people who are good at selling aren't too technical. Most people who are technical are
Exactly.
terrible at sales. So,
Yeah.
and AI is not good enough to do it for you yet.
Unfortunately.
So, okay, I want to pick your brain about AI a little bit. Obviously, being very much so in the trenches on it. How has AI changed DevOps or these open source projects or operations over the last year? And then how much do you think it's going to continue to change that space?
Yeah, so DevOps specifically is super low rate of change. So I don't think it's actually impacted it much at all yet. There are going to be engineers who are going to be asking questions of ChatGPT, but I frankly think it's probably surprisingly minimal. Not like as bad as, say, like, federal government workflows, but yeah, it's not as far off as you might expect. There is obviously, we believe, a potential there. But I think the main gap is frankly just the tool chain is hostile to being able to fully integrate with AI currently. And it's going to be pretty hard for it to get there. And then there's a lot of compliance hurdles, specifically with having AI interact with infrastructure due to the risk involved. That's also blocking adoption. Within open source, there's unequivocally been like a lot of AI. I know for sure some open source maintainers like Mitchell Hashimoto, like having rules to prevent people from using AI and PRs because he's getting so much spam in the projects he's maintaining. So like, and I think there's also been stats about like the number of commits in GitHub like skyrocketing because probably people are using AI to commit more frequently. So that's definitely had an unequivocal impact. It's just a slightly different workflow and a slightly different risk profile within the engineering space.
Have you had a chance to play around with Copilot in GitHub yet?
Honestly, I never actually used Copilot. We use Cursor, and Cursor's great.
Okay.
Absolutely a fan.
Okay. Is there any other crazy AI feature that you're thinking of adding or trying to build into the product?
Yeah, so like the current like AI suite is that root cause analysis engine that's basically works as I described. There's also basically constant vector embedding of all the DevOps data that gets touched by Plural. So you end up getting a semantic search ecosystem for everything. You can ask it like, where is microfauna database being configured? And then it also means that you have a really thorough Copilot chat that can gather information, live information from your infrastructure at any given point in time and inform the chat as needed. The newest and kind of the sexiest thing that we've done is basically full-on agents. So you can tell Plural double the size of the Grafana database for me. It'll use a semantic search to find it. It'll use the GitOps information we have as to like where it's configured in Git and everything like that, and just generate a pull request to do that chat task. And that's all autonomous and headless. So you could theoretically have it integrate with a Jira or a Linear or something like that and assign work to us, and we'll
Sweet.
do it for you. We're also going to add functionality to basically be able to run large scale infrastructure tests we call sentinels that can do things like gather a huge amount of infrastructure logs or run test jobs on large sets of clusters and then use AI to analyze the data. So that's like a pretty meaningful bottleneck, is figuring out if infrastructure is even healthy after you make a change. And the big bottleneck is just that there's a lot of data, right? And if you're parsing that through the bandwidth of a human brain, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So, but if you can parse it through, a GPU via an LLM, that could be automated at like a lot larger scale. And then the second one is being able to orchestrate the new gen coding agents like Claude Code and Open Code and OpenAI Codex. It's kind of the same thing as that existing agentic experience, but it could also be able to modify application code or automatically fix CVEs that have popped up because it's a lot more general in the ability for it to manage code changes for you. And it would still be headless. So you wouldn't have to be manually calling the CLI. You could just have an API request go to Plural. We will launch the Claude Code runner for you, make the change, and then inform you at the end as to, the pull request we created.
And that's all good to go now?
The things that are still in progress are the Sentinel and the Claude Code runner type thing.
Do you have a ETA on those?
We're hoping to have both of those basically ready by KubeCon and mid-November.
So KubeCon mid-November. Okay, great. That'd be awesome. I'm sure everybody. Yeah. Do you have a subreddit or a community where all these devs and engineers are hanging out?
Honestly, no. We have a Discord. It's actually a pretty big Discord, but it's been less traffic. We used to be much more aggressive about maintaining our Discord and keeping it hype, but we've been a lot more under the radar as we've gone more enterprise focused and Kubernetes management focused.
Okay, and then another completely random question. What are you doing in your spare time? Are you mucking around vibe coding some stuff or building anything else cool? Or do you not even have spare time at this point?
I definitely don't have spare time to do any engineering. There's a lot of coding I do, and obviously when I'm not coding, I'm selling. So like if I have spare time, it's like exercise or going out
Sleep,
to eat or like going into nature and going on a hike,
touching
like
grass and all
that's
that sort of stuff.
yeah,
Fair
yeah.
enough. Yeah. I guess, okay, so then let's wrap this up with sort of the team and any growth plans that you might have. Obviously, I mean, big pain point for yourself, time. Are you replaceable? Are you looking to make some any key hires in the short near future?
We're probably not going to hire all that much until we raise another round of funding. Hopefully
Okay.
that'll be by end of year. Actually, we think we could get to the milestones at that point, and at that point it'll be probably like a broad-based hiring spree of like additional sales, additional engineering, product management, maybe some middle management, stuff like that.
So you're not climbing out of the trenches anytime soon.
Hopefully, actually, I will be, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it's your baby, it's kind of hard to, right? Like you want to find
Yeah,
somebody
I
that.
mean that's like I've been at other early stage startups and the founder like moving from like very early stage to scale stage. There's always a little bit of an adjusted period, and they're always way too hands on. I'll probably be the same way, but yeah, it's just the way it is.
Alrighty. I think I think we got what we need. I think it's a good opportunity for us to end the show here. I really enjoy you sharing your deep insights and clear knowledge in the space. But you
Mhm.
mentioned a event coming up. Do you want to just quickly plug that again, where you'll be at in November?
Yeah. It's called KubeCon or KubeCon Cloud Native Con. It's hosted in Atlanta. I don't know if there are still tickets available, but if there are, absolutely feel free to join and we'll have a booth. We'll be doing as many demos as possible. You'll obviously be able to see the Plural logo and probably 6 or 7 of us at the booth. But there will also be like a large number of other vendors within the DevOps space there, from the big names like OpenShift and GCP and all those in GitHub and everything like that, to smaller vendors as well that are more at the startup stage like us.
Right. And if they wanted to get a demo, what's the best way to get in contact with you or the team?
Yeah, so if you just go to our website, https://plural.sh, there should be a contact sales link that you'll be able to schedule a demo really, really quickly on. We're pretty available, and I always like to show off the product if possible. If you don't want to get like, a sales call scheduled, we actually do also have a YouTube channel with a lot of demos of the product on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel should just be Plural SH.
Great. I'll link them. I'll find them and I'll link them in the description as well. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for jumping on. Hopefully, everybody who goes out there, if they can, still get tickets, or if not, catches up with you. And
Yeah.
appreciate your time for jumping on today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.